Hey everyone, welcome to Genetics at a Glance. This is Selena here, and today's question is, can taking folate, methylfolate without B12 be dangerous or be harmful? And that is a wonderful question because the person asking that recognizes there's more to the equation than just methylfolate. And so let me jump to my favorite pathway planner to illustrate that. So here's my favorite planner by Ben Lynch, and this is the folate and the methionine cycle, or methylation cycles, what they're usually called together. And on the left-hand side, we have the folate cycle, and that goes down to the bottom. There's the MTHFR gene, which leads to making methylfolate. Our body will make methylfolate. On the right-hand side is the methionine cycle. This is where we have methionine and also B12. That small circle here inside is the methylcobalamin, or methyl B12. So that's going to make methyl B12 here, methylfolate, but then we also need zinc and homocysteine at MTR to keep these two cycles moving. So we'll go to make methionine, and then we'll go back over to make THF, which is a type of folate. And so it's important to look at, okay, all of these pictures to the puzzle. So if we're pushing the methylfolate, but we don't have the pieces over here, if we don't have enough B12, then yeah, we can kind of be causing a clog here. But also the thing to know is, how do we know then whether or not we have enough of these things? And there's other on and off switches that can also happen. So as you see here in the methionine cycle, after methionine, we make something called SAM-E, and it's labeled as SAM here in Ben's charts. SAM will also slow down MTHFR. So if we're pushing this cycle by taking supplements, and then we're pushing and making a lot of SAM, it's going to naturally slow down the MTHFR gene on its own, whether or not we have a SNP. So we got to be very cognizant of these other on-off switches whenever we are starting to try to push pathways with supplements. So that's why I really like to start with getting our cofactors and getting these nutrients and getting these things from whole foods and letting the body regulate these things on its own, because it's going to do a much better job of regulating these thousands of processes happening in our body versus us trying to isolate, oh, we're gonna take this methylfolate and it's only going to do this one thing, when in reality, it's gonna have a domino effect on many other processes. So the other thing to note here on these other cofactors, we have just the MTR gene, that zinc and homocysteine. For folate to recycle, we need the ATP, we need NAD, NADP, NADPH. And so where that comes from is over in our neurotransmitter cycles, our biotin cycle. And this is super important to look at because this is part of our tryptophan cycle. And on one side of it, it's going to go over and make melatonin, and that makes us nice and sleepy. But on the other side is the excitatory kind of things, and that's going to go make it goes down through the chironine pathway and the quinolic acid to make NAD. And after NAD, it goes on to NADP, NADPH, that whole family of these NAD family of enzymes. So I'm not sure why Ben stops at NAD, because what happens after that is just so vital in our detox pathways throughout our entire body. Like hundreds of processes need this whole NAD family of things. So NAD will also has a feedback loop involved as well. So if this is not working, then our folate cycle also can have difficulty because we're not having this whole NADP family of enzymes and cofactors here for those other enzymes to work. So it's important to look at the entire picture. And that's why I like to really base my foundation on getting our nutrients and getting these cofactors from whole foods. Otherwise, we could be taking like 50 to 100 supplements, and we're going to be taking all these different supplements trying to, support these pathways, and that's just not how our bodies were designed. They were designed to get these things from foods and then to also eliminate stresses and that kind of thing. But let me get to where the foods where I like to start at first before supplementing. So here's one of my favorite sites for tracking nutrients and getting a good just kind of snapshot of where we are at on our intake. It's nutritiondata.self.com. And you have to create a free account here, and you add your foods. Like, you type in your foods, you get them, you add them to tracking, and then you, on the tracking, then you can save and analyze. So I've just thrown in a few foods here. We're going to save and analyze, and when we do that, it will give us a breakdown of the micronutrients in these foods. And so you do have to expand it, click for more details on that. And so let's look at our folate, our B12, and our zinc, because those are the three things that we're looking at in this particular question. So first here we look at the folate. Well, it looks like, oh, there's only about 49%. So there's some opportunities here of increasing folate. I would not do that by saying, oh, I need to now go take a folate supplement. No, we first need to look at boosting our foods to get them up to a really good level with the foods before we supplement. Just like when we build a house, we build it without the bricks and the wood. We're not using the nails, or we're not using mortar as building our house out of those things only. So we've got to have more of the the foundation before we start adding these things that fill in the gaps or hold things together. Let's look at the B12. Well, here B12 looks like there's plenty of B12, or there's a decent amount of B12. There could be a little bit more, but the ratio between the two, it looks like folate is the one that could potentially have some deficiencies. And again, you would want to look at labs and symptoms and other things as well, not just, okay, this one snapshot of this one day. Let's look at zinc here. Zinc, that again, this one looks to be fairly sufficient. So when I would look at this, I would say, okay, let's look for opportunities of finding ways to increase folate in our foods first, because that's going to be have the least negative effect versus taking a supplement that's strictly only folate, because the foods that are going to be rich in folate are also going to have other cofactors involved and other minerals. So we're going to get the better balance by taking the whole foods in that way. So I hope this has been helpful as to whether or not, we should take B12 or methylfolate on its own, and, if it could be problematic, and to make sure that we are looking at that bigger picture of both sides of the equation. So besides the foods, then we can get into, okay, what are lab results like? What are our symptoms like? To look at that entire picture. And if you're having challenges with that, always reach out to a practitioner to help you identify where those missing pieces are, like a really good detective to help you guys work together to say, hey, this is what we need to move forward, so that you're not really kind of throwing darts and trying to figure these things out without having a good understanding of all these other signals that can happen and how these pathways all work together. If you have any questions, you are certainly always welcome to reach out to me, and you all have a wonderful, great day. Take care.